I've been involved in open source really for the last 2 or 3 years. Most of you would probably associate me with the dark side. But what's been interesting over the last 2 or 3 years is I've sort of got out from other businesses is I've really sort of begun to understand what open source means. And the neat thing about it is it just makes a whole lot of sense. And even in the work that we've been doing, we've been picking up a whole lot of open source principles, and it's really interesting sort of balancing out the need to make a dollar, the need to create wealth, the need to build export businesses. And so there'll be lots of things that we argue about, and one of the most sort of naked moments I think I had was taking a sort of, I thought, a pretty open stance on the OpenXML thing, and then having Don just teaming me with stuff from all over the world, and a really interesting debate that I enjoyed. So fantastic, and very, very hard to argue with the arguments that came back. And what's really impressed me too with the open source thing, and I first got exposed to open source actually through .NET Nuke, and I was flying out. I was on an early flight out to Sydney, and I ended up going to a user group in Auckland, and it was really the first time I'd been exposed to open source. And what completely blew me away was there was this global community, elected representatives, really defined processes, and you saw the power of people working and creating things that were really quite special. And to me, that just completely blew me away. The power that's been harnessed. The other thing that's really blown me away in the open source community is how New Zealanders seem to feature in these big things which are happening globally. Just absolutely cool. And the network that goes on in the open source community with some of these really large companies. So I wouldn't say I'm completely there with everything yet, but definitely open source is something which I play quite a lot in now. We think about it quite a bit of time. I've done 2 investments in the last 2 years. I've put 300 grand so far, plus climbing every day, into a couple of open source projects, and those have been going really quite well. So I was absolutely delighted to be asked along, and there's some stunning companies. So into the business category, we've got some really strong nominations here, and I think that's just indicative of the excitement that's happening in this space. The first one is Zenbu. Zenbu is like the Yellow Pages on steroids. Uses mapping and community built. Using mapping in a community-built directory of over 36,000 places, businesses and points of interest. Zenbu is already streets ahead of more traditional business directories. Zenbu's points of interest are feeding into another of our finalist projects, OpenGPS, and Zenbu's growing network of Wi-Fi hotspots around the country complete the circle. When you're in a Zenbu hotspot, you can easily find local services like the nearest bank or cafe, and the entire Zenbu project has been developed by just one person, Sam Giffney. And the next one is Plan HQ. This is one of the companies that I've been investing in over the last few years, and really proud to see that team, who've been doing the plane miles. They were featured at Demo this year in the US, and also made the TechCrunch 40. So Tim, who's been driving that, and the team over here have just done an awesome job. Of course, I couldn't vote for them, but really, really proud of that team, and great to see them in the plane miles and representing New Zealand overseas. The next one is New Zealand. Sorry. The next one is New Zealand Post Red Hat. Red Hat and New Zealand Post need no introduction. For an operation the size of Post's, enterprise-grade support of the kind provided by Red Hat is what's needed. With growing demands and smaller budgets, IT departments of larger corporations are finding they can do more with less using supported open source solutions, and Post has proven this conclusively with reduced costs across the board and performance boosts that make you wonder why more New Zealand organisations aren't moving in this direction. Hats off to Red Hat for their support of these awards and the significant part they play in bringing open source solutions to some of the larger players in New Zealand's business sector. Well done. Next one is Zoom-In Project X. Zoom-In have been pioneers in online mapping in New Zealand. John Clegg and his team have brought browser-based mapping services to New Zealand that are on a par with those of Google, Yahoo and Microsoft. Using open source, Project X have launched a successful business that delivers SMAPs through TradeMe and has over 30 other websites nationwide employing Project X mapping. Project X has significantly enhanced the CarMap system, which along with Ruby on Rails, PostgreSQL and Map Server is the open source technology behind it all, providing some of these improvements back to the core project. And definitely that team have been absolute leaders in this community and in Wellington. Well done. And the final people, Silver Stripe. I think they've just come back from the States, again doing the big plane miles. So Silver Stripe took the bold step of open sourcing an established web content management system and haven't looked back since. By making the product open and freely available, they have effectively created a global market for the services they now offer around the core content management system. That means real exports for New Zealand that would never have happened on the same scale with Silver Stripe's origins as a local proprietary system. They also have access to individual developers feeding back into the open source and have caught the eye of Google, providing summer of code students to innovate and extend Silver Stripe. And we expect to see some great things from this team down the track. And the winner is?
I kind of hope there's a...
Oh, there we go. Oh, these are good trophies. Yeah. The winner is Zoom-In Project X.